Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Before the first constellations learned to hold their shape, before dawn and dusk learned to trade places without shattering, the sky was a single lucid ocean. It moved not with wind, but with listening. In that listening lay a creature older than hours and younger than silence. A dragon whose body was the curve of the horizon, and whose scales were the hush that stilled a storm. They called it many names, but all names failed. The only one that fit was the one the sky whispered when no one else was awake. The silent wind, the equilibrium, the breath between. In the lost tongue of origin it meant simply, the balance. The dragon did not roar. It breathed. When it inhaled, galaxies leaned closer to hear. When it exhaled, seeds found the courage to sleep. Its heart was a lantern buried beneath snowfall. Its eyes were the color of distance. It did not choose sides, because sides did not interest a creature that had seen circles born from fractures and bridges grown from the ribs of cliffs. In an age when gods were still learning how to be careful with their voices, the world below forgot to be gentle. One people prayed for never-ending day and did not understand why everything withered. Another prayed for permanent night and did not understand why everything froze. Between them, wars of reason and hunger, of precision and longing, braided like smoke around a mountain that had watched too many winters arrive angry. On the seventh day of an unnumbered month, the mountain sighed. The sound rose into the ocean of sky and made a single ring that widened without fading. The ring found the dragon where it rested, coiled around the quiet space between two stars, and asked, without asking, whether balance could be taught again. So the dragon dreamed. His dreams were not pictures. They were permissions. And in the breath that followed, the world received a visitor. Someone small enough to enter doors that had forgotten how to open, and patient enough to wait until those same doors remembered. Her name was Lisa. She was a keeper of weathered instruments. A compass with no north but an honest needle, a glass vial that caught only the scent of rain that had not fallen yet, and a bell that rang only when no one was listening. She lived in a village where roofs leaned together like elders exchanging blankets of rumor, and she walked with a stride that forgave the ground. On the morning the dragon dreamed her into purpose, Lisa woke from sleep as if the bed had been lifted from beneath her. The room, a low place where cedar remembered hands, felt too crowded for her heartbeat. She stepped outside. The dawn had left its gold in another pocket and came dressed only in silver. The valley below lay quiet, but not peaceful. The quiet of fog that stresses the river rather than holds it. The quiet of animals that keep their names behind their teeth. On the ridge above the village stood the old Tower of Wind, and no one climbed it anymore. The stairs complained and the door had convinced itself it was a wall. Lisa put her palm against the warped planks. "I have brought you the sound you miss," she said to it. The door considered the bell at her belt, heard its promise not to ring, and allowed itself to be door-shaped again. Inside, the tower's spine spiraled up through rafters that held small nests woven from the text of abandoned stories. Lisa climbed. At the top she opened the shutters. The valley's air entered like someone exiled returning home. Cautious, certain, full of unasked questions. She placed the bell upon the sill. "Not yet," she told it. "You ring only when we have earned it." Beneath her, the village began its argument with morning. Buckets seeking wells they had no right to command, traders insisting their measures were the only way to weigh hunger, the forge coughing itself awake. Lisa breathed in. The bell stayed quiet. She breathed out. The world forgot to shout for a heartbeat. Then the heartbeat lengthened. Then it became two. Somewhere beyond the ridge, the mountain sighed again. Lisa turned her face toward the high blue that had not yet become day. She did not call for gods. The gods, when called, sometimes mistook the cry for thunder and brought what storms understand. Lisa only listened. She felt the first permission arrive like cool cloth laid across a fevered brow. Said, "Make room." She took the compass from her satchel. The needle floated in its oil like a thin fish refusing to choose a river. But when she held it at shoulder height, the needle made a decision, not toward north, not toward any known cardinal. It pointed between, toward the place where decisions stop pretending they are different stories. "Between, then," she said. "We'll go between." She went down the tower stairs with step and pause, giving the wood time to remember that bearing weight is not the same as being crushed. By the time she reached the square, the village had gathered to practice its daily disorder. Two farmers argued about which side of a furrow belonged to the rain. A mother measured her child's growth against a wall that always lied. Strangers with bright coins tried to purchase a rumor. Lisa did not interrupt. She knelt at the well and did not pull the rope. She waited. The water rose an inch on its own. "Good morning," she told it. "I am trying to carry less." The water, surprised to be respected, made itself clearer. The mayor approached, a man whose hat had learned to walk 2 steps ahead of him. "Lisa," he said with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed being right, "we are past the time for patience. There is too much sun and not enough harvest. You always listen, but what we need is action." "I am acting," she said gently. "I am listening." His mouth drew itself as if to become a lock. "And what does the sky say today?" "It says to make room." "For what?" "For what we cannot hold alone." He laughed with the tightness of someone who was trying not to. "Very well. Make room. Meanwhile, the rest of us will negotiate with weather." He laughed with the tightness of someone who was trying not to. "Very well. Make room. Meanwhile, the rest of us will negotiate with weather." He left. Lisa stood. She lifted the bell, felt its silence like a full bowl in her palm, and tied it beneath her cloak. The valley wind, which had grown old trying to push decisions, gave up its habit and fell in beside her like a friend who did not require conversation. They walked east along the ridge path that went nowhere until someone needed it. The dragon's breath, though she did not name it, began to shape the day. Shadows rested more usefully. Birds stitched their call notes into a cloth that kept midday from burning. Lisa listened for the place where the compass would find itself content to stop. It was a meadow between 2 unwritten boundaries. Low stones hinted at a circle there, but the circle had never asked to be finished. "Lisa," he said with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed being right, "we are past the time for patience. There is too much sun and not enough harvest. You always listen, but what we need is action. I am acting, she said gently. I am listening. His mouth drew itself as if to become a lock. And what does the sky say today? It says to make room. For what? For what we cannot hold alone. He laughed with the tightness of someone who was trying not to. Very well. Make room. Meanwhile, the rest of us will negotiate with weather. He laughed with the tightness of someone who was trying not to. Very well. Make room. Meanwhile, the rest of us will negotiate with weather. He left. Lisa stood. She lifted the bell, felt its silence like a full bowl in her palm, and tied it beneath her cloak. The valley wind, which had grown old trying to push decisions, gave up its habit and fell in beside her like a friend who did not require conversation. They walked east along the ridge path that went nowhere until someone needed it. The dragon's breath, though she did not name it, began to shape the day. Shadows rested more usefully. Birds stitched their call notes into a cloth that kept midday from burning. Lisa listened for the place where the compass would find itself content to stop. It was a meadow between two unwritten boundaries. Low stones hinted at a circle there, but the circle had never asked to be finished. In the center lay a boulder with a hollow the size of a head. Lisa sat and placed the compass within the hollow. The needle spun once, twice, then balanced along the emptiest direction. She took out the glass vial and uncorked it. The scent that rose was rain that had not yet been invented. It smelled like relief, remembering its first syllable. She set the vial beside the compass. Then she laid the bell on her open palm. I will not ring you, she said to the bell. You will ring if the world is ready. Her eyes closed. Behind them she saw the sky the way the dragon had always seen it. Not as a roof and not as an abyss, but as a breathing practice shared by distances. In the long room where she kept things that refused to be words, she felt a presence arrive. Not heavy, not light, not voice, not silence. The presence waited with her as if to say, I will be as gentle as you are. She did not ask for a sign, so the sign came as a courtesy. A single petal fell into her lap. There was no tree nearby that could have given it. The petal was the color of a pause, with veins shaped like the paths people take when they stop pretending to be lost. Lisa smiled without thinking. That smile widened the meadow by an inch in every direction. She opened her eyes. The compass needle held between. The vial's mouth glowed faintly without light. The bell was warm. Not yet, she told it again. But soon. In the village below, the mayor's negotiations with weather were not going well. He shouted at the sun until he was hoarse. He paid a priest to scold the clouds. He threatened the river with a new name. The river declined to answer. When the priest's ceremony failed to move anything but dust, he kicked the well stones in embarrassment. The well decided to be 2 inches shallower. Toward evening, a stranger arrived carrying a staff that had learned to be a ladder in poorer times. She wore a cloak of stippled dusk and had the careful hands of someone who placed stones back where she found them. When she saw Lisa in the meadow, she paused, as people do at the edge of kindness, and then approached. I am Mara, she said. I have been walking where winds give up. Welcome, Lisa replied. I am listening where winds begin again. Mara sat. Her staff made a geography in the grass. I used to dream of a sound too soft to hear. Lately I have not heard even that. Then the dream is working, Lisa said. It is teaching you to notice the room around the sound. Mara touched the compass, then the vial, then the bell, with a reverence that made them all more themselves. Do you wait for a god? I wait for balance. And if it does not come, then we have learned how to wait together. They stayed until the first star argued itself into being. When night arrived, it did not fall. It settled. The dragon shifted in its ocean of listening, an almost motion that turned constellations into the shape of a cradle. Somewhere, a city that had taught itself to be loud put down its instruments without shame and let the hour lean against it. In the hollow of the boulder, the compass needle trembled, as though a mountain had exhaled right through it. The vial misted with the memory of rivers. The bell took a slow breath that had no sound. Lisa looked at Mara. Will you help me carry a secret? I am very good at setting heavy things down, Mara said. It is this. The sky is a chest that opens when no one demands it. Balance is the hand that knows how to lift the lid. Mara nodded. Then we will keep our hands gentle. They slept with their backs against the earth that remembered how to hold. In the middle of the night, the dragon, unseen, unbidden, uninterested in applause, drew a breath so carefully that Dawn felt obligated to learn from it. Between that breath and the next, the world received its first true pause in an age. Roosters forgot to compete. Wolves remembered to whisper. The mayor, dreaming of triumph, dreamed instead of a table with two empty chairs and woke with a desire to invite someone he could not yet name. At first light, Lisa opened her eyes. Mara was already awake, watching the east the way a child watches a story find its first sentence. The compass needle lay perfectly still, balanced not on a point but on the idea of middle. The vial's vapor had condensed into a single drop that refused to fall. And in Lisa's palm, the bell felt as if it had swallowed a horizon. Soon, Lisa breathed. Down in the village, a young shepherd led her flock toward the higher grass. She moved without hurry, stepped around thistle the way one moves around grief, and hummed a tune so old it had no melody left, only grace. She stopped at the meadow's edge when she saw them. Sheep settled. Dogs yawned. The shepherd lifted a hand, palm open as if measuring rain that did not want to be caught. What do you do here? She asked. We are making room, Lisa said. For what? For what chooses to belong, Mara replied. The shepherd nodded as though she had been waiting her whole life to hear that sentence. I will stand on the west, she said, so it does not have to cross alone. She took her place with the easy dignity of someone whose work is to keep things together without explaining how. The meadow breathed. Clouds came forward in the sky and forgot to hide behind their important names. They arranged themselves the way families do when a picture is being taken. Awkward at first, then relieved to discover that awkwardness is precisely what makes people lovable. The dragon, amused, kept to its distance, the kind of distance that can be crossed by a single unafraid thought. Lisa looked at Mara. Mara looked at the shepherd. The bell warmed further. The compass needle found a quiver at the perfect center. The drop at the vial's lip grew round as a held word. Not yet, the meadow said kindly. And so part one ends with a held breath. The first true space the world has granted itself in an age. A pause large enough for balance to dream inside it, and gentle enough for anyone to enter without a password. The meadow never fully woke again. It began living in half-dreams, that gentle interval between breath and word, heartbeat and silence. Each blade of grass seemed to remember a lullaby it had once hummed to the wind. And in that fragile music, the dragon's dream deepened. Lisa and Mara stayed where the earth had asked them to wait. Days passed like thoughts rather than time. The sky's color was no longer something the eye could name. It shifted with listening. At dawn, the air smelled of beginnings. At dusk, it tasted like forgiveness. And always, somewhere between, the dragon's breath circled through the valley, unseen but felt, like the pulse of something enormous sleeping beneath the bones of the world. Lisa learned to hear its rhythm. Mara learned to see with closed eyes. And the shepherd, whose name was Aaron, began to speak to silence as though it were a friend she had misplaced long ago. When the first storm in a century approached, the people of the village panicked. Thunder, to them, was no longer part of nature, it was rebellion. Rain was not blessing, it was invasion. They ran to the Tower of Wind, seeking Lisa. They found her sitting at its base, bell and compass before her, eyes half open. "The storm comes," they said. "It always has," she answered. "But it brings lightning. So does understanding," she whispered. The mayor, hat trembling with pride, shouted, "Do something! You speak with gods, do you not?" Lisa smiled softly. "No, I listen to one who does not speak." Mara stood behind her. She carried the staff like a horizon made of patience. "If you wish to save your homes," she told the people, "then let them breathe. Open every window. Let the sky enter before it must force its way in." No one moved, until the shepherd Aaron stepped forward, her cloak damp with pre-rain. "She is right," she said. "A door locked against wind only teaches the wind to shout." When the storm arrived, it did not rage. It remembered. Each drop fell as if the world were being written back into its body. The dragon's dream wove through the thunder, tempering it into rhythm rather than ruin. The mountains glowed faintly. Their veins of silver pulsed like heartbeat. Lightning struck the old tower once. The bell inside did not ring, it hummed. Its notes spread through the valley, neither warning nor mourning. It was balance, finding voice through vibration. Lisa stood in the rain, arms open, and whispered, "You may rest." The storm paused mid-breath, long enough for every creature to hear its own reflection. When it passed, no home was destroyed, but every wall was changed, wood softened, stone darkened, roofs bowed in humility. The people stepped out into silence and found it no longer frightening, felt like belonging. That night, the sky shone clearer than it ever had. Stars arranged themselves in patterns unseen for generations, constellations shifting into a new story. At the center of it all, the faint outline of a dragon, body stretched across eternity, wings folded in repose. Lisa, Mara, and Aaron climbed to the meadow again. The bell was cool now, its silence full rather than empty. Aaron asked, "Is it over?" Lisa shook her head. "Balance is never over. It is a kindness that must be remembered each dawn." Mara pressed her staff into the ground beside the compass. A pulse of light traveled through the soil, reaching far mountains, seas, and sleeping forests. "It listens," she said. "Even the stones listen tonight." They sat together as the wind carried the scent of rebirth. And then the dragon dreamed once more. This time, its dream reached deeper than the roots of the world, to the place where time itself kept its pulse. It dreamt of opposites learning to dance without erasing each other, of day loving night not as enemy but as mirror, of fire cooling into understanding, of humans learning that silence is not absence, but the shape of meaning before it speaks. The gods stirred in their distant heavens, puzzled, for they had built worlds from command, not from balance. But even they could feel something changing, a softness rippling through existence, like dawn deciding to stay just a little longer before rising. One god, the oldest, leaned upon his staff of eternity and said, "The dragon dreams again. We must not wake it too soon." And so even the heavens waited. Down below, Lisa felt it, that tremor in the stillness, that breath between breaths. She touched the bell. It was warm again, but not from fire, from purpose. She turned to Mara and Aaron. "When it rings, the world will choose," she said. "Choose what?" asked Aaron. "Whether to keep dreaming or to wake." They did not yet know that when the bell would finally sound, it would not mark an end, but a beginning neither gods nor mortals could predict. For the dragon's dream was only half complete. It had yet to see whether balance could survive being understood. And so part 2 closes with the hush before revelation. The still sky above 3 quiet souls, and beneath it, the dragon sleeping within its own breath, the heartbeat of equilibrium waiting to turn into song. The night after the storm was unlike any other. The stars did not merely shine. They listened. Their light pulsed with the rhythm of something vast and patient, something that had been sleeping in the fabric of creation itself. Lisa woke before dawn, though dawn had begun to lose meaning. The air around her hummed softly, not with wind, but with memory. Every leaf, every droplet, every breath of soil seemed to whisper the same word. Remember. When she stood, she felt the pulse beneath her feet, the dragon's breath echoing through the bones of the earth. It was slower now, but deeper, not a dream of balance, but a balance of dreaming. Mara and Aaron met her at the ridge where the mountain opened to the sky. From there, they saw clouds moving in deliberate spirals, their edges glowing faintly, silver in the places where day should have been, gold where night still lingered. "It's changing again," Mara said. "No," Lisa replied, eyes half closed. "It's breathing." Down below, the villagers began hearing things they could not name. A baby cried, but its cry carried the tone of a flute. The wind through the chimneys whispered in chords. Even the river spoke, not in language but in rhythm. The world was singing, and no one knew the song. The people gathered around the Tower of Wind again. Some came in fear, others in awe. They found Lisa standing where the bell had once rung, the silence heavy, its promise waiting. "What is happening?" they asked. "The dragon dreams," she said softly, "but the sky has forgotten to breathe with it." As if in answer, the heavens trembled. A slow quake that rippled across the stars like a sigh too long held. Comets flared, not falling, but circling, as though tracing the boundaries of a dream. Mara looked toward the east. The horizon shimmered between two colors that refused to blend. Day and night holding each other, refusing to let go. Balance had found its edge. Aaron whispered, "If balance holds forever, is that still life?" Lisa turned toward her and smiled sadly. "Even the most perfect stillness must breathe." The dragon stirred. Its movement was not of muscle or motion, but of realization. It had begun to dream of itself. The stars blinked once, all at once, and when they opened again, the constellations had changed shape. The dragon's wings stretched across half the sky. Its tail coiled around the moon, and its eyes, twin embers in the void, watched the world below. Then came the whisper, not from the sky but from within every living thing. "Will you let me breathe through you?" The people fell to their knees. The mountains leaned. Even the rivers paused. But Lisa did not bow. She closed her eyes and whispered back, "Yes, but you must learn to breathe as we do, with fear and with love." The dragon's light dimmed, not in anger, but in thought. And then, from its chest, a single beam of gold fell toward the earth. It did not strike or burn. It settled, like sunlight touching the surface of still water. When it reached the meadow, the bell rang once. A single tone, infinite in its simplicity. Every creature, every grain of sand, every atom, all of existence listened, and for the first time the sky exhaled. The stars moved again. The horizon shifted. The world breathed. One vast inhale, one soft release, and the dragon, too, breathed with it. Balance was no longer stillness. It was motion, perfect, living, changing motion. Mara whispered, "It's learning." Lisa nodded. "No," she said quietly. We are." The three stood beneath the breathing sky, bathed in light that belonged to neither sun nor moon. And above them, the dragon turned once more in its sleep, not to wake, but to dream a little deeper. The morning that followed was unlike any morning the world had known. There was no sunrise, only a soft, glowing exhale across the horizon, as though the sky itself had learned, at last, how to breathe. The dragon's dream lingered, unseen but everywhere. The mountains hummed faintly. The rivers pulsed with tides no moon commanded. Everything, from stone to cloud, existed between one heartbeat and the next. Lisa walked through the village. The people were awake but not afraid. They spoke softly, their voices folded into the rhythm of the world's breath. The air seemed alive, aware, fragile, yet infinite. A child pointed toward the heavens. "The stars are still here," he said, "but the sun is awake too." Above them, day and night shared the same sky, woven like two threads unwilling to be torn apart. Constellations glimmered beside a pale sun, and in that impossible harmony the world found peace. But far below, deep in the marrow of the mountains, something stirred, something the balance had forgotten. Erin felt it first. She had always been attuned to silence, but now silence reached for her, not as peace, but as warning. When she pressed her hand against the earth, she felt it, a second heartbeat, irregular and urgent. It was the pulse of something dreaming beneath the dream. Another presence, she whispered, something restless. Lisa and Mara followed her to the mountain's hollow, where ancient tunnels breathed cool air and unspoken memories. The walls shimmered faintly, carved with old sigils of dragons and moons, of creation and undoing, the endless circle of becoming. They walked until light itself seemed afraid to follow. At last, they reached a vast chamber filled with slow, silver mist. And there, upon a bed of black stone, lay another dragon, smaller, darker, its wings folded tight, as if to hide from the stars. It was not asleep. It was remembering. The creature's skin rippled like the surface of deep water, and its eyes, pale and hollow, glimmered with something that was not hate, but sorrow. Lisa stepped forward. "It's his reflection," she breathed. "The shadow of the dream." The dragon opened its eyes fully then, and the sound that filled the cavern was not a growl, but a wordless grief, echoing through all that had ever lived. "You call this balance," it said, not aloud but within. "Yet you have chosen light, and left me here." The cave shuddered. Rocks shifted like ancient memories waking. The symbols on the walls began to glow, rewriting themselves into motion. Mara clutched the edge of her cloak. "Lisa, it's angry." Lisa shook her head. "No, it's hurting." She knelt, pressing her palm to the cold stone floor. The dragon's sorrow poured through her, a flood of every forgotten fear, every silence that had been mistaken for peace. "The sky breathes only in half," the dragon whispered, "while half of me is denied." The balance they had built trembled. Outside, the horizon dimmed. Stars faltered. The sun wavered. Dream and waking blurred. Lisa rose, her voice low but unyielding. "Then we remember you, not as shadow but as self." The dark dragon's eyes softened, just slightly. Mara stepped beside her. "Two dreams, one breath," she said, "and one must not smother the other." The dragon exhaled, a long, shivering breath that carried the weight of eons. It filled the chamber with shimmering dust, fragments of night and dawn intertwined. The mountain ceased to tremble. Silence became full again, alive. And as they stood there, a second heartbeat joined the first. Sky and earth pulsed together. The dragons, light and dark, turned within one another's dream. For the first time since the beginning, balance was not a line. It was a circle. The world had grown still again. Not in fear, not in silence, but in balance. The dragon's breath lingered across the horizon like twilight caught between heartbeats. Mountains exhaled. rivers whispered, and the winds returned to their eternal wandering. Above all, the sky no longer trembled beneath the weight of endless waking. It dreamed slowly, endlessly, of what it meant to be whole. Yet within that dream something stirred, a spark of curiosity, a pulse of memory. Humanity, small and radiant, had begun to dream as well, not of conquest, nor of gods, but of understanding. They had seen the dragon once, if only in reflection. They had felt the weight of its gaze, the warmth of its shadow. And in the spaces between their waking and sleeping, they began to speak, not with words, but with reverence. They built no temples, no shrines. Instead, they listened to the silence above the clouds, to the hum beneath the earth. And in their listening, they remembered what the dragon had whispered through the ages. To know balance is not to control it. To live is not to rise, nor to fall, but to breathe between. And so they breathed. Generations passed, and the dragon slept, its vast body curled around the axis of the world. The scales shimmered like frozen dusk. Its eyes, closed now, reflected the dream it once taught creation to hold. In time, the world forgot its name again. But balance did not vanish. It simply became life, the quiet rhythm that underpinned every heartbeat, every tide, every flame. Sometimes, on nights when the stars seem too close to touch, a child will wake from sleep and swear they heard a whisper, a sound like wind crossing water, a breath like thunder turning to song. They will look to the horizon and see a shape in the clouds. And in that moment, something ancient will look back, not to judge, not to remind, simply to share in the dream. For even the gods must sleep, and even dreams must wake. The world no longer feared the silence between storms. The mountains stood in quiet dignity, and the seas rose and fell in rhythm with the breath of the sleeping dragon. It was not the end of creation, nor its beginning. It was the heartbeat in between. High above the horizon, the stars aligned in a curve of light. They shimmered faintly, forming what the ancients once called the dragon's spine. Sailors whispered their prayers to it. Dreamers traced its path before sleep. It became not a god to worship, but a truth to remember, that peace was not the absence of motion, but the harmony within it. The people learned to move with the world, not against it. Their songs no longer sought to command the wind, but to join it. Their stories no longer chased eternity, but honored the moment. Every birth, every death, every breath was a note in the same endless melody. And when the last temple fell to dust, when even names became shadows in forgotten tongues, something greater than memory remained, the dream itself. Beneath the still sky, a child stood on a mountain ridge, watching the first dawn rise after 1,000 quiet nights. The wind brushed against her hair like a whisper. She closed her eyes, and for a fleeting heartbeat, she felt the dragon breathe through her, not as a god, but as the pulse of the universe itself. The stars trembled once, softly, like a sigh, and the voice that filled her mind was vast yet tender. You are the dream that remembers me, and I am the silence that holds your song. The child smiled, opened her eyes, and the world exhaled with her. A new day began, gentle, balanced, alive. The dragons stirred far above the clouds, not to rise, not to rule, but to dream again. And in that dream the sky was whole,